What if I told you that one of the most twisted and bizarre cold cases in American history remains unsolved to this day? A woman found brutally murdered, her identity unknown, her killer a mystery, and a trail of evidence that only leads to more confusion. This is the chilling story of the Lady of the Dunes, a case that has haunted investigators for nearly 5 decades. Was it a random act of violence? Or is there something even more sinister lurking beneath the surface? This is the most twisted cold case you've ever heard of. Brace yourself, because this story is about to take you into the heart of one of America's most perplexing unsolved murders. The gruesome discovery. It was a quiet summer day on July 26, 1974, when a family visiting Race Point Beach in Provincetown, Massachusetts, stumbled upon something that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. Walking along the dunes, they noticed a strange sight, what looked like a body lying in the sand, partially covered by a blanket. The discovery was horrifying. The body was that of a woman, decomposed beyond recognition, and her death had been anything but peaceful. The authorities were called, and soon the area was swarming with police and investigators, all trying to make sense of the grisly scene before them. The woman was lying face down on a green towel, her head almost entirely detached from her body. Her hands had been severed, likely to prevent identification through fingerprints, and her skull had been crushed with a blunt object, possibly a military entrenching tool. It was a brutal crime, made even more disturbing by the fact that her killer had seemingly made efforts to conceal her identity. There were no immediate clues to her identity, no purse, no identification, no personal belongings, except for a pair of Wrangler jeans and a blue bandana tied around her head. The local authorities had never seen anything like it. Thus began the decades-long mystery of the Lady of the Dunes. A small-town shock. The murder shocked the small, tight-knit community of Provincetown. Known as a summer getaway for tourists, artists, and writers, Provincetown was the last place one would expect a grisly murder. The peaceful sand dunes, which had been a place of tranquility, were now marked by the presence of an unknown killer. Local police, in cooperation with the Massachusetts State Police and the FBI, launched an exhaustive investigation. They canvassed the area, looking for any witnesses who might have seen something suspicious. But despite their efforts, no one reported anything unusual. The summer crowds had come and gone, and whoever was responsible for the crime had seemingly vanished into thin air. The media dubbed the woman the Lady of the Dunes, a haunting title for a victim who, even in death, was surrounded by mystery. The investigation begins. The first step for investigators was to try and identify the woman. Without fingerprints, they turned to dental records, hoping to match her teeth to those in the national database. The Lady of the Dunes had expensive dental work, crowns and fillings that were unusual for someone in a small town. This led investigators to believe that she might have been from a wealthier background, or at least had access to high-quality dental care. But despite running her dental records through databases across the country, no match was found. This lack of identification was the first of many roadblocks that would plague the investigation. Next, the police attempted to recreate the last days of the woman's life. Based on the decomposition of her body, forensic experts estimated that she had been dead for about 10 to 20 days before she was found. This placed her death sometime in mid-July, but without an identity, it was impossible to know where she had been or who she had been with during that time. The physical evidence found at the scene also offered little help. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints, and no weapon left behind. It seemed that whoever killed the Lady of the Dunes had meticulously planned the crime and covered their tracks. Theories emerge. As the weeks turned into months, investigators began to entertain various theories about who the Lady of the Dunes might have been and why she was killed. Some believed she could have been a tourist who had come to Provincetown for the summer and met a tragic end. Others speculated that she could have been involved in criminal activity or connected to organized crime, given the extreme measures taken to hide her identity. One of the most intriguing aspects of the case was the fact that no one had come forward to report her missing. For someone who had received expensive dental work, it seemed strange that no family or friends were searching for her. This led some to believe that the woman might have been living a transient lifestyle, moving from place to place with few personal connections. There was also speculation about the manner of her death. The fact that her head had been nearly severed and her hands removed pointed to a calculated act of violence, perhaps by someone with military or criminal experience. The use of a potential military tool suggested that the killer may have had some training in combat or survival techniques. As the investigation continued, more questions than answers emerged, and the case began to grow cold. The Haunted Dunes. As the years passed, the case of the Lady of the Dunes became one of the most infamous cold cases in Massachusetts. Provincetown locals would often speak of the tragedy, and the dunes where her body was found took on an eerie, haunted quality. Many believed that her spirit lingered there, unsettled by the lack of justice and the mystery surrounding her death. People reported seeing strange lights in the dunes at night, and some claimed to hear whispers carried on the wind. Whispers that they believed were the voice of the Lady of the Dunes herself. Despite the case going cold, local law enforcement and the FBI continued to revisit the case periodically, hoping that new technology or a fresh set of eyes might reveal something that had been missed. But for decades, the Lady of the Dunes remained an enigma. Breakthroughs and false leads. Over the years, there were several moments when it seemed like the case might finally be solved. In 1980, investigators exhumed the Lady of the Dunes' body to create a more accurate composite sketch of her face. The new image was widely circulated in the hopes that someone might recognize her. But once again, no leads emerged. In the 1990s, as DNA technology advanced, investigators obtained a sample of the Lady of the Dunes' DNA, hoping to match it with databases of missing persons. However, without a known identity to match against, the DNA yielded no new information at the time. One of the most infamous false leads came in 2000 when a convicted serial killer, Haddon Clark, claimed to have murdered the Lady of the Dunes. Clark was known for his brutal murders and had a reputation for playing mind games with authorities. He led investigators to several locations where he claimed to have buried other victims, but nothing substantial was found. In the end, his confession was dismissed as another attempt to manipulate the system. Hollywood connection? In 2015, the case of the Lady of the Dunes took an unexpected turn when author Joe Hill, the son of legendary horror writer Stephen King, made a chilling discovery. While watching the 1975 movie Jaws, which was filmed in Martha's Vineyard, Hill noticed something strange. In one scene, there was an extra in the background who bore an uncanny resemblance to the composite sketch of the Lady of the Dunes. The woman in the film had long reddish-brown hair, just like the victim, and was wearing a blue bandana, an item found at the crime scene. Hill speculated that the woman could have been an extra in the film who later traveled to Provincetown and met a tragic fate. While the theory captured the public's imagination, it ultimately led nowhere. The woman in the Jaws scene was never identified, and there was no concrete evidence to link her to the Lady of the Dunes. Still, the eerie coincidence added another layer of mystery to the already baffling case. New technologies, old mysteries. As technology continued to advance, investigators hoped that modern forensic techniques could finally provide answers in the Lady of the Dunes case. In 2019, they turned to genealogical DNA testing, the same method that had been used to solve the Golden State Killer case. This technique involves using DNA samples to trace familial connections, potentially identifying the victim through distant relatives. For the first time in decades, there was renewed hope that the Lady of the Dunes might finally be identified. While genealogical DNA testing has helped solve numerous cold cases in recent years, as of 2024, the identity of the Lady of the Dunes remains a mystery. The search for her name and her killer continues. Theories, speculation, and haunting questions. Even though the case remains unsolved, countless theories and speculations surround the Lady of the Dunes. Was she a victim of a serial killer, a tragic figure who crossed paths with a predator, or was her murder the result of a personal vendetta? Someone who wanted to ensure she would never be identified. One theory suggests that the Lady of the Dunes could have been involved with organized crime, and her murder was a professional hit. The removal of her hands and the destruction of her face might have been an effort to ensure that no one could trace her back to a larger criminal network. Others still believe there may be a supernatural element to the case, especially given the eerie nature of her discovery in the dunes and the strange coincidences that followed. Chapter 10. The Legacy of the Lady of the Dunes. The story of the Lady of the Dunes has left an indelible mark on Provincetown and on true crime enthusiasts across the world. It is a case that has captivated the public's imagination for decades, not only because of its brutality, but because of the questions it raises about identity, justice, and the nature of evil. As new technologies emerge and cold cases continue to be solved, there is still hope that the Lady of the Dunes will one day get her name back, and her killer will be brought to justice. But for now, her case remains one of the most twisted and haunting cold cases in American history. Thank you for watching this episode from Velours of the Past. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and intrigue, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when our next tale from the past goes live.